Welcome to this demonstration using the Serious Illness Conversation Guide and Shared Goals of Care form in aged residential care. My name's Carla. I'm a nurse practitioner. My main experience has been in palliative care, and I also spent 6 years in aged residential care. I'm also a national trainer for the Advanced Care Planning program. This is a supplementary resource to the training video, which you can find on the Talking COVID website. So before watching this demo, it would be ideal if you've watched the full Serious Illness Conversation Guide training video on the training page. So if you click on the Talking COVID website, you'll see on the left-hand side in the menu, you'll see training. So click on the training, the next page opens, and if you scroll down, the training video is the first one that you'll find. We're going to watch a video and look at a demonstration of the use of the Serious Illness Conversation Guide to support a conversation with a relative of a resident in a facility who's not competent to make his own healthcare decisions. Then we're going to look at how we might capture the conversation in a shared goals of care form. So you're about to meet Mary. Mary is the daughter of Bill, who is a 78-year-old gentleman with Alzheimer's dementia, and he was admitted to the residential aged care facility a couple of weeks ago. Mary has been looking after Bill at home for the last 3 months after her mum died, and care has started to become extremely difficult because Bill has started wandering and he was unsafe to be left at home. So I've talked to Bill and discovered that he's got very little insight into his health and his cognitive decline, and he's really not competent to make his own healthcare decisions. But he did say to me that he's very happy for me to talk to Mary, and said that Mary will know everything I need to know about him. So I've arranged to have this conversation with Mary over Zoom because she's got some sick children at home and has to stay with them. Let's look at things to consider when preparing for this conversation. So we want to be having this conversation as part of a new resident admission process to support the development of their long-term plan and to determine the goal of care should they deteriorate, which of course can happen at any time. It's worth pointing out that this will never be an isolated conversation. There'll be other conversations surrounding it, including conversations about the progression of the person's illness or illnesses, and what treatments or interventions may or may not be offered in the future. We also need to ensure that we include the enduring power of attorney and any other relevant people. We need to check for our own implicit bias, and it's a good opportunity to watch the implicit bias videos if you haven't done so. Then we need to read through the notes, the inter-eye assessment, and any other documentation that will contribute useful information to this conversation. We also need to talk to other team members as they may also have information to contribute. We need to check our own readiness for the conversation, and we need to make sure we have the right documents in front of us. So the Serious Illness Conversation Guide and the Shared Goals of Care form, which we're going to have a look at in more detail now. We're choosing to focus on the National Shared Goals of Care document for this demonstration, but just to note that some organisations may have different documentation in use. Whichever document is being used in your organisation, the information discussed here should ideally be included. So this Shared Goals of Care document has been specifically designed for aged residential care. The front of the form gives us space to document the conversation, but it also reminds us that we need to do some preparation. So we need to check if the person's got an advanced care plan or an advanced directive, because that's an important part of this conversation. We need to check that we're talking to the right person, and we need to establish whether the resident themselves is able to participate in the conversation, or indeed whether they're competent to make their own decisions. If the resident isn't able to participate, or unwilling to participate, we need to document that. So people reading this form will understand why they haven't been involved. It's really important to include them if they're able to and willing. So you'll note that this form follows the flow of the Serious Illness Conversation Guide. So let's take a closer look at that now. You'll see the flow of the conversation down the left-hand side of the guide mirrors the shared goals of care form. In preparing for my conversation today with Mary, there are a couple of things that I need to specifically consider. I need to think about the language because I'm talking to Mary rather than to the resident himself. So I need to use the third person. I also need to think about which prognostic statement fits best. And I think for Bill's situation, the function prognostic statement fits to his situation, but I do need to adapt it slightly because we know that Bill is going to deteriorate. Hi, Mary. Thanks for meeting with me today.
Hello, hi Carla. Thank you so much for meeting me too.
Hey, no worries. And thanks for meeting over Zoom. I understand your kids are sick, are they?
Yeah, it was a bit of a hard night last night, so I've kept them both home, and yeah, hopefully they'll be fine. They're just they're sleeping it off. But yeah, I'm a bit tired, so if I feel a bit come across a bit weird, then I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. No worries. So as we talked about last week, we want to make sure that we give your dad the best care possible. And to do this, it'll be good to have a conversation about what's happening with his health and what might be ahead for him, and what's important to him. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So this is an important conversation, and I know that you were going to talk with your brother. Is there anybody that needs to be involved in this conversation today?
Yeah, I managed to have a chat with my brother a little while ago, and that was great. But he doesn't want to be involved with this at all. It's just a bit hard for him. But he's told me what's important to him and what he feels is good for Dad. So that's good. So I can bring that into this conversation.
Yeah, okay, that's really good. So to make sure that we're on the same page, can you tell me what your understanding is of what's happening with his health at the moment?
Well, Mum died 3 months ago, and that's when I started looking after Dad, and that's when I realised that she'd been covering for him, and he's quite good at covering for himself as well, but not when you end up living with them for a while. So things were much worse than what I had thought, and I don't know whether it was kicked off with Mum dying, and that made it a little bit worse, but the dementia's getting worse, and so I know that it's not a good thing that's happening.
Okay. All right. So in terms of his health, how much information do you want from me about what might happen in the future?
Well, I would like to know as much as possible because I want to be able to be there for my dad. I mean, he's not fussed about this. He thinks it's a bit of a bother to have this type of conversation. He'd much rather just be. But I think actually I'd like to know as much as I could do, but sometimes it's really hard to take it in. And
Sure.
so if I have some time, and if I can always come back for more, but I just just some time. But don't be afraid to tell me things that need to be told.
Okay, no, that's good to know. And this won't be the only conversation we have, of course. We'll talk again about what's happening as things change.
Yeah.
So this is my understanding of where things are at. As you know, he has quite advanced dementia, which is progressing and has progressed more rapidly since his wife died, which is quite common. I've had a conversation with him just to see where he was at. He really doesn't have any insight currently about what's happening with his health or what might be ahead. So he certainly isn't in a position to make decisions about his health care. But he did say he was very happy for me to talk to you. So that was good to hear.
Yeah.
Look, as you know, this is likely as well as he is going to be, and things will get worse, as you've said. And it's important we prepare for that.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Okay.
It's quite hard, isn't it?
It is. It is hard. Yeah, it's a hard thing to think about your dad
Mm.
unwell and getting more unwell, I guess.
Yeah. 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 I love my dad. I just want to make sure he's okay. That's all.
Sure, of course. So, what do you know about his priorities if his health or as his health does get worse?
Well, he's always been one for um, dignity and respect. He's always been one to say that we need to treat people with dignity and respect. That was his whole mantra during his life. And so,
Yeah.
you know, the whole do to people as you would do to people what you'd want them to do to you. So for him, I think that's really important for him. That's a big priority, is dignity and respect. And it maybe sounded a bit vain, but he's not. He was always about putting your best foot forward. So his appearance has always been important to him, making sure he looks good, he's feeling good, because I think that helped him feel good and showed that he was putting the, showing the world that he was the best him that he could be. So I think, yeah, that's quite a good priority. Those are things that he would be his priorities.
Thank you for sharing that. I can see that in him, and it's good to know, so that we can maintain that for him or help him to maintain that. So what worries him, do you think, when he thinks about, or what has worried him when he used to think about his health changing, perhaps?
Well, I mean, you've talked to him in there where he said he doesn't, it's a bit of a bother, doesn't want to be bothered with it. It's a bit of a fuss, and he's happy for me to talk to you about this.
Okay.
But I do know that when this first, I guess now in hindsight, when it first started, when he was starting to lose things. It was quite distressing for him, and I think yeah. So I think not being in control, not being able to have that ability to do the things he would want to do would be that would be a worry.
Okay, so worried about losing that control.
Mm.
So what used to help him through tough times in his life?
Oh, he would always, mum was always a big strength for him. And I guess she's not here anymore, so that's one big strength, that thing that helped him. But he always gave to the community. He was always about giving to people and supporting others, and that helped him through tough times, I think. And so connecting with people and talking. So I think, yeah, seeing his grandkids, that type of thing.
That's good to know. And what abilities do you think are so important to him that he wouldn't be able to imagine living without them?
I think he would, he's always been a reader. He loves the newspaper. He would read the newspaper. And so I guess that's why I thought he was fine when he was with mum, was because he was reading the paper. He was doing what he always used to do. And but I think maybe just being able to continue to go through that, to be reading, would be good. I think yeah, he would just like to be interacting with others, would be really good for him. That's the things he'd like to do, but also being able to look after himself, being able to do the basic functions by himself, being able to do that. Those are things that he would like to keep doing.
Okay, like going to the bathroom and dressing.
Yeah, and that kind of links with his dignity, being, a dignified man.
Sure. So as his health does get worse, how much would he be willing to go through, do you think, for the possibility of more time?
Mostly when I've interacted with people, they've asked me about what I want for him. And what I want from him is to not go, to live with us forever, to be who he always was. And And I guess that's gone. And that's probably me being selfish, because just being able to talk about what he wants is really, really good. Changes the way you feel, really. So what he would want is, he'd want to be able to live as much as he could do, but not to be in discomfort or pain, and to be, just Mum was the love of his life, and I don't know, maybe that's a hard thing, but I think he would like to continue as best he could, but not to be put through too much treatment, pain,
Okay.
or anything like that. That wouldn't be any use for him. I think he'd probably just like to I don't know, just carry on to the best he can do.
Okay, so it sounds like comfort, dignity is probably more important to him than prolonging his life.
I think so, and also the fact that he is, what's happening to him is, that is hard for him. Well, it's hard for us as well, but I think it's really hard for him. But yeah,
for sure, for sure. How much does your brother or other family members know about what is important to him, do you think?
well, I've talked to my brother about this, and I'd like to say he's on the same. He agrees with me in that we
Okay.
want, that it's about what Dad would want, and Dad would want to be treated well, treated with respect, be able to have some semblance of what he used to have, but also not to be in too much pain.
Okay. All right. Sounds like you're on a similar page about what your dad would want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good. So, Mary, what I've heard you say is that what's most important to your dad is to be treated with dignity and respect, to be presentable, and to have to be able to take care of his own needs as much as possible. Yeah, and I guess keeping that in mind, what I would suggest is that we focus his care on maintaining that dignity, that comfort, and rather than looking at doing too much in terms of intervention to try to prolong his life if he does get very sick. Would that be?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he wants to be a bother. I don't think he, yeah, he's, yeah, no, that sounds right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we will do everything we can to make sure he gets the best care possible. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to go over or talk about?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that if you can fix, if there's things that he like, it's something that's an infection or something that, then please do everything you can do to do that, because I want him to be safe and secure, and to feel like he is being looked after. So as I guess when it comes down to when he really does decline further, then that's when we'll have to have talks a bit more, I guess.
For sure, and we will. And that's good to know that, things that can be fixed, we'll definitely do that. We'll definitely try to fix things that can be fixed. And if there comes a time when things are no longer fixable, or what's happening isn't fixable, then comfort and dignity would be the absolute priority.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. And you just let us know if there's any questions you have later on, or anything you want to talk about, or you have any concerns, please let us know.
Okay, I will do. Thank you very much.
Right. No worries. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So I hope you found watching that conversation useful. I've found since using the guide that I've been able to obtain more useful information from people to establish, what's most important to them. I don't know if you noticed in that conversation that Mary was a little surprised to be asked about what was important to her dad rather than what was important to her. And I think that's an important point. And we need to make sure we're talking about what matters to the resident, not necessarily about what matters most to the relative that we're talking to. I now have enough information to continue to fill out the shared goals of care form, which I'm going to run through with you now. I've already filled out this bit prior to the conversation, so we'll move on to what was discussed in the Explore section. In this section, it's important to document that this is Mary's understanding of Bill's priorities and values. You'll see that I've bullet pointed the documentation to follow the questions in the guide, but equally this could be documented in a more free text way. Wherever you can, I also suggest capturing the actual words used by the person. For example, here I've put, Bill always likes to put his best foot forward. It really just helps to give a sense of the person that we're talking about. So when we're wrapping the conversation up and summarizing the key points, we sometimes hear additional information, which can be documented in the additional comments section. For example, Mary told me that she had had conversations with her brother and that he's in agreement with what she is thinking. And this is useful for us to know. And if you document additional information from this conversation in the clinical notes, you can tick that box to indicate this. Of course, there's no need to repeat the information that's on the form. So on the back of the form, you'll notice that there's 4 choices about goals of care. When thinking about Bill, we're clearly not talking about restorative goal of care for him. What we're talking about is goal C, which relates to the fact that Mary feels that he would want reversible things treated if he didn't have to undergo too much in the way of uncomfortable interventions. Comfort is still the priority, but we would want to make sure that we focus on his quality and treat things that can be easily treated. At some point, we would no doubt shift to goal D, which is where we would focus only on his comfort and not trying to reverse anything. And that may become the case when his quality of life is much more limited. So I would review the form with Mary before I sign it to give her the opportunity to review what's documented and to share any reflections she may have had after our conversation. I'd specifically want to review the wording in Goal C with her, and because we didn't specifically talk about hospitalisation, this is an opportunity to touch on that and to talk in more detail if needed about the fact that hospitalisation often causes distress for people with advanced dementia, and that focusing on treatment that can be provided in the facility would more closely align with the primary goal of maintaining quality of life and comfort. Of course, if that can only be achieved by hospitalisation, then that would be considered. So it's important to review the goals of care at any change in health. And also, it doesn't replace a conversation with the enduring power of attorney at the time that healthcare decisions need to be made. We still need to have those conversations. However, it provides a starting point for those decisions that may need to be made in a hurry. It also provides direction for the nursing staff at a time when the enduring power of attorney may not be available. The document needs to go with the resident if they're transferred to hospital or to another facility, because it provides valuable information about what matters most to the resident. This conversation would ordinarily be led by the GP, a nurse practitioner, or a senior registered nurse. If it's a registered nurse that's had the conversation, then of course the content of the conversation should be documented on the form by that person, but the goals of care decision does need to be agreed to and signed by a doctor or nurse practitioner. So in summary, this conversation is part of the assessment process in age residential care and will be one of many conversations that you will have with residents and families about their care. This conversation ideally occurs soon after admission, and decisions need to be revisited as part of routine resident reviews and with any significant change in health. Decisions about goals of care should be clearly documented and signed by a doctor or nurse practitioner. And lastly, goals of care are clinical decisions, which are based on what we know of the resident's values and preferences, as well as what would be deemed medically appropriate. So I hope you found this useful. There's more information about having these conversations on the Advanced Care Planning site.